Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I am a young project manager for an unlimited commercial GC. I picked up a hammer for the first time 4 years ago in 2021. No prior experience. I was raised believing if you work hard and apply yourself, you will be successful. For 2 years, I learned everything that I could in the construction industry, took my work home with me, and studied on my own time to better myself. For that, I was promoted to foreman. I was brought in to take over a small project at a 14-building, 140-unit condo complex called Lakeside Gardens. It started small, and the board of directors for the HOA, led by Richard Walters, told me they loved my professionalism, work ethic, and ability to complete projects on time and under budget. "Your attention to detail is impressive," Richard told me during one of our early meetings. "The previous contractors couldn't keep to schedule or budget." "I appreciate that," I replied. "I believe in doing things right the first time. We won a big contract because of that small project. That was 2 years ago. I have since taken over the job of foreman, superintendent, and project manager. I do the billing, meetings with engineers and board members, scheduling, takeoff, material ordering. I even train the subs on application of new products because we didn't have enough mid-management. The project just passed $2.7 million. We got a bid request for another $3 million job in the same complex. All the while, the board of directors telling me how appreciative they are and how they've gone through 5 different contractors in the years before committing to my company because of my management and quality of work. During our quarterly review meeting, Richard pulled me aside. "You know, we've been through hell with contractors before you came along. Your company is the first one that's delivered what was promised." This boosted my confidence, and I went to the owners, Dave and Mike, asking for the raise they promised me 1 year ago for my production. "Look, I've been managing this entire Lakeside project solo for 2 years now," I explained in their office. "We discussed a compensation review last year when the project hit the $2 million mark." Dave leaned back in his expensive leather chair. "The experience you're gaining is far more valuable," he said with a dismissive wave. Mike nodded in agreement. "This kind of project management experience usually takes people a decade to acquire." I smiled and nodded. "You're right." I put my resume on public, got contacted by a headhunter named Taylor, just accepted an offer this week for $80,000 a year salary, full benefits, 28 days PTO, including holidays, in the office now, no more working from the field full-time in my own truck, laptop, Wi-Fi in my truck for on-go billing when I visit the out-of-state projects, $80 per diem, 100% matching 401k for the first 3 years of my employment, quarterly bonus programs. The company I'm with now, Summit Construction, only pays me $40K and that's it. None of the above listed benefits. The final nail in the coffin was when Dave and Mike bragged about how much my project made in a company meeting and then denied me a Christmas bonus. The Lakeside Gardens project brought in record profits this quarter, Dave had announced proudly to the whole team. "We're looking at a healthy year-end for the company." Later that week, when bonuses were distributed, my envelope was conspicuously thin, just a card thanking me for my continued dedication. I laid this offer on their desk Friday and watched their jaws hit the floor. "You can't be serious," Mike sputtered. "After everything we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked calmly. "I've managed a multi-million-dollar project while being paid less than half the industry standard." Dave tried to recover. "We can discuss a small adjustment to your compensation package." "I don't think you understand. This isn't a negotiation. This is my 2 weeks' notice." I told Richard, the HOA board president of the project I'm running, about my resignation when Summit couldn't match my offer. His eyes got big and requested a meeting with Dave and Mike and expressed serious concern about moving forward with the new project without my involvement. "You're the only reason we were considering the additional contract," Richard told me, then turned to Dave and Mike. "Your company's reputation with us is entirely based on this manager's work. They don't have anyone to replace me, and I'm not gonna lie. It feels good to hurt their pockets when I gave them everything I had for 4 years, and only asked for the median project manager salary. Duck those greedy bastards." The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought I'd have to deal with HOA drama in a community I literally created from scratch, but here we are. This happened about a year after I retired from real estate development, and let me tell you, it was both frustrating and deeply satisfying in the end. So for context, I spent 30 years in residential development. My last major project before retiring was a planned community of about 200 homes on what used to be farmland. I handled everything. bought the land, designed the layout, hired the engineers and surveyors, oversaw construction of the roads and utilities, subdivided the lots, and sold them off to various builders. The whole process took about 5 years from start to finish. When the community was about halfway built, I decided to keep one of the nicest lots for myself. It was a corner lot with extra space, perfect views, and I knew exactly how the neighborhood would develop because I planned it. My wife and I built our dream retirement home there. We moved in during the final phase of construction, and I have to admit, it felt pretty great watching the community I created come to life around us. Part of creating the HOA was legally required for the development. I wrote the initial bylaws, recorded all the plats, established the common areas, and set up the basic structure. Then I handed it off to the homeowners once enough people moved in. I kept copies of absolutely everything. Every survey, every plat map, every engineering document, every legal description. 30 years in the business taught me to keep immaculate records. For the first few years, everything was peaceful. The HOA was run by reasonable people who understood that the rules existed to keep property values up, not to make everyone miserable. Then about 3 years after I retired, she moved in. I'll call her Karen because, honestly, she fit every stereotype. She bought a house 2 streets over from mine and immediately started attending every HOA meeting. Within 6 months, she'd gotten herself elected to the board. Within a year, she was president, and that's when things went downhill fast. Karen had opinions about everything. She started sending violation notices for the most ridiculous things. Someone's trash can was visible from the street for 10 minutes after collection. Someone planted flowers that were the wrong shade of approved colors. Someone's car was parked in their own driveway at the wrong angle. It was endless. I mostly stayed out of it. I'd done my time dealing with difficult people in business, and retirement meant not engaging with nonsense. My property was immaculate anyway. Professional landscaping, fresh paint, everything maintained perfectly. I figured she'd leave me alone. I was wrong. One day, I got a certified letter from the HOA. Karen claimed that my fence, the one I'd installed 7 years ago when we first moved in, was encroaching on community property. She demanded I remove it within 30 days or face daily fines of $100. I was baffled. The fence was a nice 6-foot privacy fence that ran along my back property line, separating my yard from a community green space. I'd installed it exactly where the survey markers indicated when we built the house. I'd even hired a professional surveyor at the time to verify everything was correct because I knew the importance of property lines. I called the HOA office to clarify. Karen answered and immediately went into lecture mode. She insisted that she'd had the community property surveyed and my fence was definitely on HOA land. She claimed it was crossing into the common area by at least 2 feet along the entire back length. She said as HOA president, she had a fiduciary duty to protect community assets and I needed to comply immediately. I tried to explain that I had the original surveys and engineering documents from when the property was developed. She cut me off and said those were old and clearly inaccurate and that her new survey was the correct one. When I mentioned that I was actually the developer who created the subdivision, she laughed and said that didn't matter and I wasn't above the rules. That's when I decided to maliciously comply. See, Karen wanted documentation. She wanted surveys and proof. She wanted everything official and by the book. So I decided to give her exactly that. I started gathering documents. I pulled out the original master plat for the entire subdivision, all 200 lots. I pulled out every survey I'd commissioned during development. I pulled out the engineering drawings showing exactly where every property line was located. I pulled out the legal descriptions filed with the county. I pulled out the original HOA documents that I drafted, including the exact legal descriptions of all common areas. But I didn't stop there. I hired a professional surveying company, one of the best in the state, to come out and do a complete survey of not just my property, but the entire block. I specifically asked them to pay close attention to the boundaries between private lots and HOA common areas. This cost me about $3,000, but I considered it money well spent. Then I really went to work. I pulled out the original title reports for every property on my block. I contacted the county records office and got certified copies of every recorded plat. I compiled a document package that was probably 4 inches thick. The survey results came back within 2 weeks. My fence was exactly where it should be, precisely on my property line, not an inch over. The surveyors noted that the original survey markers from the development were still in place, and their measurements matched perfectly. But here's where it got interesting. The survey also revealed something else. Karen's property, which backed up to the same common area from a different angle, had a shed that was actually encroaching on community land, not by a little bit, by about 4 feet. Her shed was completely over the property line and sitting squarely on HOA property. I smiled when I read that part of the report. This was going to be even better than I thought. I requested a formal HOA board hearing to dispute the violation notice. Karen tried to deny my request, but the bylaws I'd written clearly stated that any homeowner had the right to a hearing before fines could be imposed. She had to allow it. The hearing was scheduled for the next monthly board meeting. I showed up with my 4-inch stack of documents, the new survey report, and a lawyer friend who owed me a favor. The community room was packed because word had gotten around that someone was finally standing up to Karen. Karen started the hearing by presenting her case. She had a survey that she claimed showed my fence encroaching on community property. I asked to see it. She handed over a single page that looked like it was drawn in Microsoft Paint. I'm not even exaggerating. It was clearly not a professional survey. When I asked who had prepared it, she admitted that she'd done it herself by measuring with a tape measure from what she thought was the property corner. She claimed she didn't need a professional because she'd looked at the property markers. I let her finish. Then I asked if I could present my evidence. She reluctantly agreed. I started by introducing myself to the board members who hadn't been around when I developed the property. I explained my background and my role in creating the community. Then I presented the original master plat, pointing out the exact legal description of my lot. I showed them the original surveys from when the property was subdivided. I showed them the engineering drawings. I showed them the county records. Then I dropped the new professional survey report. I explained that I'd hired licensed surveyors to verify the property lines. I passed around copies showing that my fence was exactly where it should be, not an inch over the line. Karen's face was getting red. She started arguing that the old documents must be wrong, that property lines can shift over time. My lawyer friend politely explained that property lines don't just shift and that recorded plats are legal documents that determine boundaries. Then, I got to the best part. I pulled out the section of the survey report that covered Karen's property. I very calmly explained that during the survey of the area, the surveyors had noted that her shed appeared to be on community property. I suggested that since she was so concerned about protecting HOA assets, she might want to address this encroachment on her own property. The room went completely silent. Then someone in the audience started laughing. Then someone else. Within seconds, half the room was laughing while Karen sat there looking like she'd swallowed a lemon. She tried to argue that the survey must be wrong about her shed. I pointed out that it was conducted by the same professional surveyors she'd claimed we needed to determine accurate boundaries. Either the survey was accurate, or it wasn't. She couldn't have it both ways. One of the other board members asked to see the survey. After reviewing it, he made a motion to dismiss the violation notice against me. It was seconded and passed unanimously, with Karen abstaining. Then the same board member made another motion, that the HOA needed to address the encroachment of Karen's shed onto community property. He suggested giving her 30 days to remove it or relocate it to her actual property, with the same $100 daily fine structure she'd tried to impose on me. Karen absolutely lost it. She started yelling about how this was a witch hunt, how everyone was against her, how she was just trying to do her job. The board voted anyway. The motion passed 4-1. The aftermath was beautiful. Karen ended up having to hire a company to move her shed, which cost her about $2,000. She tried to fight it, but the bylaws were clear, the same bylaws I'd written years ago specifically to prevent arbitrary enforcement. She resigned as HOA president 2 months later after several other homeowners came forward with complaints about her ridiculous violation notices. She tried to sell her house and move out, but the shed situation had to be disclosed, which complicated things. The new HOA president reached out to me personally to thank me for standing up to Karen. He asked if I'd be willing to serve as a consultant to the HOA on property issues, given my background. I agreed to help out on an as-needed basis, free of charge. My fence is still standing exactly where it's always been, right on my property line where it belongs. And every time I look at it, I smile and remember the look on Karen's face when she realized she'd picked a fight with the one person who had every single document needed to prove her wrong. The moral of the story? Don't try to bully people about property lines when you don't actually understand property lines, and definitely don't try it with the person who literally created the property lines in the first place. The next one is a petty revenge story. I, 33F, just got off a 7-hour cross-country flight, and I wanted to share this story before I go pass out. I was flying Southwest, so there are no assigned seats, and I was in B boarding group. I went towards the back of the plane so I could get an aisle seat since I'm fairly tall. It was a completely full flight, so I knew there would be someone sitting next to B. Enter entitled Karen, EK. She had waited to check in, so she was at the back of the C boarding group. She was pissy because at first she couldn't find anywhere to put her massive roller bag and the flight attendants were trying to get her to gate check it. Then she came up to my row and I thought, great, she's going to take the middle seat. The following dialogue, to the best of my sleepy recollection, occurred. EK, move. OP, what? EK, I paid for an aisle seat and you are sitting in my seat. OP, more confused. What? EK, practically screaming. I said I paid for an aisle seat and you are sitting in my seat. OP, this is Southwest. There are no assigned seats. EK, are you stupid? I said I need the aisle seat. OP, I can get up to give you the middle seat if you want. I stupidly thought that was the end of it when a flight attendant came over and asked her to take a seat. I got up to let her into the row and she immediately sat down in the aisle seat. I tried to protest to the flight attendant, but EK kept loudly saying she paid for an aisle seat. I know Southwest is switching to assigned seating soon, but they haven't implemented it yet. Now our flight was already delayed 30 minutes, and I could see all the other passengers looking at me as if trying to say, please just let her win, we want to get there as fast as we can. I looked at the flight attendant, and she gave me a pleading look as if to also say, please just give her this, we want to get out of here. So, being the fairly passive person I am, I stepped over her, she wouldn't get up to let me in, and sat in the middle seat. Now, I may be passive, but I also am petty. I am also really gassy on airplanes. Normally, I try to contain it and go to the restroom when it gets bad enough and just let it rip there. But I was pissed at EK, and frankly pissed at everyone else on the plane for letting her get away with it. So I decided that I was just going to let her rip all 7 hours of the flight. I put on my headphones, over the ear, and started passing gas about 1 hour into the flight. And lucky for me, and unlucky for everyone else, they were particularly stinky. Every time I would toot, she would sniff, smell it, then shoot dirty looks at me. I just ignored her and just kept listening to my music and reading my Kindle. At about hour 5, she had enough and hit the call button to ask to move. The flight attendant told her we were fully booked and there is nowhere to move her to. EK looked even more pissed, but I guess she had seen enough of the internet to know if she threw a fit, she would get arrested when we landed. When we did land, since we were near the back, I gave it one more silent but deadly toot to seal the deal and let her bathe in my stink for a couple more minutes. Do I feel bad that I ruined her flight? No. Do I feel bad that I stank up my row? Now. And also, for the first time ever, I didn't have gas pains, nor did I need to rush to the bathroom immediately after getting off my flight. Next time, check in early like the rest of us plebeians and maybe you'll get a less salty seatmate. The next one is a malicious compliance story. For context, I work as a salesman in a wine store. It's not a normal wine and liquor place, it's a curated selection, meaning we pick out all the wine that we sell. This is irregular in retail. Most selections are curated by the distributor. As a result, all the employees have to really know their crap, and we are regularly asked a lot of questions and need to give detailed and honest answers. Our customer base really likes us, and new customers are either pleasantly surprised by the experience or endlessly mad we don't carry their name brand thing they like. Damn you, whispering angel. The other day, a couple came into the store at the recommendation of a friend. I will call them Asher and Blake. Asher was very excited and was super happy when we had the bottles they had taken pictures of at a party the other day. Blake, however, immediately started making comments like, really that one, or that tasted awful, you want that? Asher was clearly a little upset at this, but I gathered this was just a normal dynamic in their relationship as it was brushed off rather quickly. After we put those bottles aside, they tell me they are going to do a garden party since it's warm. Nice sunny day, light apps and snacks, average spring party. So they ask me to recommend some wine and I start going through the store and showing them some options. I hit all the big guys, Loire and New World Sauvignon Blancs, Provençal Roses, Albarinos, Toscanas, and New World Pinot Noir for the red drinkers. A good selection for the food they had described. Well, Blake did not think so. Every suggestion I made was met with a counter. I showed them a nice floral, unoaked white burgundy. I think we should do Chablis. Pinot Noir. Don't you think Pinot is too heavy? Sauvignon Blanc, too sweet. Albarino, too heavy. At this point, I'm at a loss. I'm running out of stuff to give Blake, so I scale up a bit, offer some fuller-bodied wines. Not great pairing to the event or the food, but not destructive. Blake is still not happy. Asher is clearly pissed at this point. They've been holding their tongue, but every denial makes their face a darker shade of red until they finally pop. Asher apologizes to me and says they are going to go with my suggestions and tells Blake that they can pick out a bottle they want because clearly they are not willing to listen to me. I go through and put their cart together, listen to them argue a bit at the register, and then check Blake out after Asher storms out of the store. Whatever, I'm free of it. Asher is a saint for dealing with B. It's done. It was not done. The next morning when I show up, Blake is waiting for me with the 3 bottles they picked. Got 3 of the same thing. The wine is off, Blake says, holding the bottle out like it's some sort of weird bug. I tell them that, yeah, it happens sometimes, I'll check it out. To be clear, it is rare that the wine is actually off. Most of the time, the customer just doesn't like it. It doesn't hurt us, and we want the business, so we always accept exchanges and just agree that it wasn't right. The customer has been right twice that I have seen, and I was one of the two customers, compromised cork. So I open up the store with an impatient Blake standing over me before finally taking the bottle. I kid you not, this thing is like 80 degrees. It is hot. The sun hasn't been out long enough to do this either, so I'm pretty confident they did something to it. Anyway, I pour myself a glass and taste it. Even through the mire of hot booze, I can tell it's good. All of the flavors I expect stand out. It smells fine. No evidence of oxidizing or mildew. Good bottle. Feeling petty, I tell Blake as much, wanting them to admit that they just don't like the wine. Blake turns a bit red and says as much. Good. Let's pick something else out then. Where are your Super Tuscans? Blake asks. I eyed up because this is the perfect chance to duck with them. We have 2 true ones in the store. One is a very accessible price, pretty standard. Sangiovese, Cab Franc, Merlot, Syrah. Really nice and medium-bodied. Wouldn't be too bad for the garden party, but still on the heavier end. The other, expensive as hell, Syrah and Cab Franc. It is the inkiest, blackest, heaviest wine you could imagine. I love it, but I think it might kill anyone who drinks it in 80-degree weather. Well, I give Blake the heavy one. Blake, of course, is in love when I tell them about it. Big, bold flavors, heavy, crushes the flavor of whatever you eat with it. Perfect for Blake. They get 3 to replace the bottles they returned and end up spending an extra $130 even with the cost of the refunded wine deducted. Now I know I'm way more sensitive to wine and food than others are, but this was perfect. Even somebody who's demolished their palate with years of cigar smoking would be able to tell that wine is awfully paired. I'm happy knowing Blake is going to get some weird looks from their guests and a tongue lashing from Asher, and Blake is happy with the bottle of grape-based olive oil they now own. Compliance given maliciously. The next one is an entitled people story. I'm a self-employed contractor. I go where I am needed for however many days I'm needed for. Sometimes it's a day or two, sometimes it's a few hours. I park in customer or visitor parking or wherever else is open to any given person unless the work order specifically says otherwise. I am also qualified for a disability parking pass due to issues I have with my knees and legs. I use it when I need it, and if I'm waffling, I'll take it only if there are others free. Better safe than sorry when it comes to my pain level and tolerances. So I'm on a multi-day, 1-day-a-week gig for a company downtown in my city where parking is problematic. Between the businesses and the apartment complex literally right next door, many have to walk for a chunk to get into the building or pay handsomely for parking. Thankfully, there's a disability parking space right out front that's typically free. Today, I'm hurting. It feels like crystals are growing in my joints and lifting my feet. Even curb height is basically my entire available energy stores. They had a ramp or else I would have left right then. No joke. I get out and there's someone in the smoking area right off my car. I don't like smelling like smoke at the end of my day, but it is what it is. This is also where we meet the star of our story, Karen. Yes, I use that name, but it's well deserved. Trust me. She says something to me right as I exit my car, but I can't hear her cause of road traffic. So I walk around the side so we can talk more clearly. If you're not paying attention, it may have looked like I walked around the side like a typical person would. In reality, I'm leaning hard on my car because I'm hurting, and meds haven't kicked in yet. Cue this lovely interaction. Karen, you can't park there. There are people in wheelchairs that need it more. No one was around, so she was obviously meaning some mystery person in the future would need it. Quick side note. Why is it that when an ableist person wants to be entitled, it's always a wheelchair user, not walker, cane, or arm crutches? It's beginning to be a sign of what's about to come, TBH. I was, however, finally able to use a line I'd had loaded for way too long. This is give or take, but you'll get the idea. Me. Since when did you become my doctor and determine I don't need accessible parking anymore? Karen. You park here all day long and other people need to get into the bank. Additional disability parking is available directly around the corner and on the main entrance to the bank. So, me. Ma'am, why do you care? I'm allowed to park here. Karen. No, you're not. Other people need it more than you do, and they can't park here if you are. Again, no one was around and the bank was even closed. Me. Ma'am, I'm allowed to park here. I'm not here all day, and even if I was, there's no time limit on this spot. Lots of 2-hour or less parking spaces nearby. Karen isn't letting this go, so I pull out my phone to record for my own safety. She stops talking long enough for the security guard parked literally next to me to say she's allowed to park here. I didn't hear it, but I would confirm it later. But despite the camera still rolling, Karen can't help herself. Karen, you can't park here. You've been here every day for the last 2 weeks, and other people need it more than you. Me. Despite the fact that I look normal, I need this space. You are not my doctor, and he would not risk his license lying on an official form just so I can have more convenient parking. Karen. You have been here all day, every day, for 2 weeks. You shouldn't be parking here. Me. I wasn't even here yesterday, nor the day before, nor the day before, nor the day before that. Karen. Yes, you were. Me. No, I wasn't. I was at tilde address tilde. Would you like to see my GPS logs? I keep them for tax reasons. Karen. Tilde glossing over that, I can prove her wrong. Tilde. You work in that building. You can't park here if you work in that building. You'll be here all day and other people need it more. Me. There is no time limit on this space. Tilde moving my camera to the parking sign tilde, and I have a permit. I'm allowed to park here, and I don't work in that building. I work here tilde, tapping my magnetic business logo attached to my open car door and right in front of Karen. Repeat that interaction 3 more times. Karen. Well, we'll just see when your car gets towed. If you want to risk it, that's up to you. I zoom in on her face on my phone, not knowing if I'm capturing anything cause the early morning sun with its famous glare is everywhere. I figure just in case she slashes my tires or something, I have her face on my phone. That shut her up enough to get my stuff and walk to the front door with obvious limp and limb-lifting restrictions. Karen tries to say something right when I get to the door, the last desperate move of the ists and those who, despite being proven wrong, still can't let it go, but instead of listening to her, me. Ma'am, I'm done talking to you about this. You're not my doctor, you're not my family, nor anyone I care about. I'm not proving myself to a stranger, proving myself disabled enough for your liking. Then I all but literally dropped the mic and walked away. Not too long later, I go down under the guise of forgetting something from my care. Turns out I really did forget something, so it was all good, because I felt like Karen was going to pull something, and I just got a bad vibe. The security guard and his partner were still out front, and Karen was thankfully gone. I asked him if anyone had an issue with me parking there, making sure I wasn't in the apartment complex's assigned spaces or something just to be safe. He said he told Karen I was allowed to park there, and she threatened to have me towed. He said he told her to call the cops, but that I was legally allowed there, and they wouldn't do squat. The guard's partner totally has similar issues with her joints, and she 100% emphasized with me about the feeling of crunchy crystals growing in your extremities. She told her partner that they should keep an eye on my car to be safe and not to worry about Karen. Karen was the neighborhood gossip and was always telling or up in everyone else's business. She didn't even own a car. A while later, I go back to my car for parts, and I see her talking to people by the bank in loading zones with blue curbs, aka disability parking. She's telling them that I won't move, so they have to stay back here. Everyone she talked to literally said, "It's okay, I don't mind, I'm good here," or some version of that. Right before I packed up for the day, I went to the window and saw Karen back in the smoking area. Of course, she was eyeballing my car, glaring at it, really. So I grabbed my keys and honked them to make sure she couldn't screw with me just in case I'd forgotten or it was unlocked somehow. She jumps slightly, looking around as if trying to find me, but doesn't see me. The windows are reflective from the outside, so she can't find me even if she'd thought to look up to my story. I honked it again for good measure, laughing all the way back to my tools and finished packing up. I think the part that stands out the most is the fact that she didn't ask me to move. She just told me I couldn't park there, so some mystery person that may or may not want to at some future point could over me. Ableist are some of the most entitled people I have ever dealt with. Anyway,